So you often find on gravity fed heating systems the F&E tank, feed and expansion tanks, get really grimy and really rusty, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to clean one out so that you don't get any blockages in your heating system. So this property has a gravity fed heating system. So as you come up into your loft, if you're looking for your feed and expansion tank for your heating, that will be the smaller of the two tanks. You see here there's a cold water storage tank and an F&E tank next to it. So this is the tank we're going to be working on today, and we're going to be cleaning out all that grimy rust. The first thing you need to do is lift off any insulation on the top of the tank and move that to the side, and you'll then be able to unclip the lid from the feed and expansion tank. And there you go, you can see the amount of grime and rust inside the tank. And I'm going to show you the easiest way to drain that and clean it out without getting any of that rust and grime down the feed pipe. It's important that we do this the right way, because if we drop rust and grime inside the feed pipe, we could end up with blockages in the heating system. So there's a few little techniques to doing this the right way, and there's not many tools needed at all. There is, however, one very handy little tool, and I'll show you that in a moment. The first thing we need to do is turn off the isolation valve from our cold water feed, because if we don't turn that isolation valve off, the tank will keep filling up. You'll find the isolation valve in question on a cold water feed coming from the cold storage tank and coming in to this ball cock valve over here. This is the isolation valve that you want to turn off. Now to turn it off, you just turn the isolation valve 1/4 of a turn. On the odd occasion these isolation valves can be faulty, so just give that a test to check that the water has been isolated. To do that, just push the ball down to the bottom of the tank, and you'll see if any water runs into the tank, then the isolation valve has not been turned off. This isolation valve is fed from mains cold water. If there is an issue with the isolation valve, you can turn off the water at the mains and replace the isolation valve. Now there's one more step that we need to take before we start draining this tank, and that is to bung the feed pipe. The reason we bung the feed pipe is we don't want any of that rust and contaminant going down into the heating system. So I like to bung these tanks before I start cleaning them out, otherwise it can cause blockages. The best way to bung a heating tank is to use one of these rad valve change kit bungs. I'll stick a link down below in the description. They're really cheap and they're really handy if you've got a gravity fed heating system. They're always a good thing to keep up in the loft if you're going to be doing any adjustments to your heating system. So now I'll show you how to insert the bung into the feed pipe. Now to locate the feed pipe, just look at the very bottom of the tank. In this case it's down here. Just make sure with your finger that there's no big lumps of rust in that feed pipe before you insert the tank bung. Grab hold of your tank bung and turn it as you push into that feed pipe. From above you can now see that the bung is inserted into the feed pipe, so we can now go ahead and drain the tank. So now we've got that bung inserted, we can go ahead and drain out the old dirty water from the tank. How are we going to do that without making a mess? So I have a method that I like to use, and that is a drill pump. They're very cheap on Amazon. Basically this little pump here, you put a drill on the end and it will pump out that water into a bucket, and you don't make loads of mess inside the loft, and that will drain this tank nice and quickly. I'll put a link in the description if you want to grab yourself one of these drill pumps. Grab a bucket, lay that down next to you, put one piece of hose from the pump into the bucket, and then put the other end of the hose from the drill pump down into the tank. All we then need to do is start draining that water. Just go around the bottom of the tank and take out as much water as you can. Now my wet vac is broken, otherwise I could have used that. If you've got a wet vac, go ahead and use that instead of the drill pump. What we'll do now is move the pump to the side and start scraping out some of that old rust. Unfortunately, there isn't really a nice way to do this unless you've got a wet vac handy, which would save you having to put your hands in too much of this grime. but mine's broken, so we're just going to have to get our hands in there and get a little bit dirty. Make sure you wipe off any of the old sludge on the bottom of that ball cock valve as well. Normally you get sort of a small coating of rust in these, but this one's really bad, one of the worst I've ever seen, and you can see that's most of that rust gone. Either wear gloves or wash your hands afterwards, because you'll have inhibitor on your hands as well. So that is all of that rust removed from the F&E tank. I still wouldn't eat my dinner off it, but there's certainly no debris left in the tank, and that's the main aim, because we're trying to avoid any future blockages. And leaving all that debris and rust in there, especially on a property with microbore pipe, could well cause blockages. So I'm really glad we got that cleaned out. I don't know how many years that's been left for, but it's obviously not had any attention for quite some time. Now all we need to do is refill the tank with some nice fresh water. It's really easy to refill the tank. Just turn that isolation valve back on. Should only be a quarter of a turn. So there's a little white pin just there at the end of my finger, and you may need to free that off. If water's not flowing freely, just give that pin a bit of a pull and you'll find you'll free the pin off enough for that ball cock valve to work as it should. However, if you're having any problems with that, do consider replacing the ball cock valve. You'll find that once the tank is full enough, the ball cock float will rise up and stop the flow of water. And there we go, the flow has fully stopped now, and the level in the tank is where it was before, and you can now see how nice and clean it is inside the tank. Now you must not forget to remove the bung that we put in the tank. Just pull that out now. You can go ahead and put the lid back on the tank. Now that's job done, but there's one more thing I recommend you do before you use your heating system. So by taking that water out of the tank, we have lost some of the inhibitor in the system, and we need to replace that inhibitor to fight against future rust. Otherwise we're going to end up with the same problem again. It's really easy to add inhibitor to the system, but I do recommend that you do that in a flowing part of the system. The F&E tank is not a flowing part of the system, so I like to add the inhibitor into the radiators. That's a much more effective way of replacing that lost inhibitor. There are guides how to do that on the internet, but that's a video for another day. That's it guys, job done. Hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please smash the like button for me, because that really helps the video to reach and help more people on YouTube just like you. And if you're not a subscriber already and you like DIY content, plumbing, electrical, carpentry and all kinds of things, then please hit the subscribe button, because you don't want to miss out. And if you do want to support the channel, we do have a DIY Guys Patreon, and there's plenty of benefits for you over there, so go check it out. There's a link below in the description. And I'll see you guys in the next video.